From translation, Net New English Translation, this 149th day of the year, today we are reading passages, Nehemiah 12-13, Nehemiah chapter 12, verses 1 to 47. These are the priests and the Levites who went up with Zerubbabel son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, Sariah, Jeremiah, Ezra, Amariah, Malach, Hattush, Shechaniah, Rehum, Ikesh, Tobijah, Abijah, Shemaiah, and Jerijah. The Levites were Jeshua, son of Jozadak, and his relatives, Kadmiel of the line of Hodaviah, and those descendants of Asaph, Zechariah, Meshullam, Bakbukiah, Unni, and their relatives. The gatekeepers were Shallum, Akub, Talmon, Ahiman, and their relatives. Shallum was the chief, and he was assisted by his brothers, Zechariah the son of Meshelemiah, Jediel the son of Zikri, and Zechariah the son of Meshelemiah could see well as he watched over the business matters. The Levites included Meshelemiah son of Korah, son of Asaph, Zechariah the son of Meshelemiah, Jiziel, Jemma, Berechiah, and Azriel. Meshullam son of Bikri, Amzi son of Shechaniah, Meshullam son of Bikri, and Jozabad son of Jeshua son of Bikri. From the Izharites, Zechariah and Meshullam, and from the sons of Hebron, Hashabiah, Yela, and Jozabad, along with Jeshua son of Bikri, Amok, and Shelemoth son of Hakosh, and Zechariah son of Meshelemiah. The leaders of the Levites were Hashabiah, Sherebiah, and Jeshua son of Kadmiel, along with their associates, who were responsible for the external affairs of the temple of God. The treasurers were Shelemiah son of Kori, his brother Zechariah son of Meshelemiah, and Jiziel son of Zikri, an official in the temple of God. The leaders of the Levites were Shemaiah son of Hasshub, Zechariah son of Berechiah, and Jehiel son of Shuram, and from the Levites, Bakbukiah, Unni, and their associates who stood opposite them in the service of the temple. The gatekeepers were Shallum, Akub, Talmon, Ahiman, and their relatives. Shallum was the chief, and he was assisted by his brothers, Zechariah son of Meshelemiah, Jediel son of Zikri. Zechariah son of Meshelemiah could see well as he watched over the business matters. All of these were chosen by Lot to serve as gatekeepers for the temple of God, and were responsible for the external affairs of the temple of God. They were also responsible for the service of the temple, and for the rooms in the temple, and for the purification of all holy things. They served as the guards of the temple of God. The other Levites were appointed to all the other tasks of the temple of God. The leaders of the Levites were Hashabiah, Sherebiah, and Jeshua son of Kadmiel, along with their associates, who were responsible for the external affairs of the temple of God. During the reign of Darius the Persian, a record was kept of the Levitical leaders. A record of their service was made until the time of Darius king of Persia. The descendants of Levi were recorded in the annals of the kings of Judah until the time of Jehoiakim. The leaders of the Levites were Hashabiah, Sherebiah, and Jeshua son of Kadmiel, along with their associates, who were responsible for the external affairs of the temple of God. For the singers there were Mattaniah son of Micah, from the descendants of Asaph, and his associates, his brothers, Bakbukiah, Unni, and their relatives who stood opposite them in the service of the temple of God. These were the singers who led the worship, while the gatekeepers were at their posts at each of the gates. They did not need to leave their assigned duties because their fellow Levites made preparations for them. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought from all their homes in order to bring them to Jerusalem to celebrate the dedication with gladness, hymns of thanksgiving, and songs accompanied by cymbals, harps, and lyres. The singers gathered together from the region around Jerusalem, from the villages of the Netophathites, from Beit Gilgal, and from the fields of Jebah and Asmavath, for the singers had built for themselves villages around Jerusalem. The priests and Levites purified themselves, and also purified the people, the gates, and the wall. Then I brought the leaders of Judah up to the wall, and appointed 2 large thanksgiving choirs to give thanks. One was to walk on the wall to the right toward the Dung Gate, and the other was to walk on the wall to the left toward the refuse gate. They went all around the wall, and then stood still at the temple of God. So they circled the wall and returned to the temple of God at the sheep gate. They went up the stairs of the city of David, by the staircase of the wall above the house of David, to the water gate on the east. The other thanksgiving choir went to the left. I went with them along the top of the wall, above the Tower of Ovens, to the broad wall, and then went down by the fountain gate, and straightened up before the water gate of the fountain. They then went up the steps of the city of David, by the staircase of the wall above the house of David, to the water gate on the east. Both choirs of thanksgiving stood in the house of God. So did I along with half of the officials, along with the priests Eliakim, Maaseiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, Elionai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with their trumpets, and also Maaseiah, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Jeshua, Binnui, and Shimei. The priests with trumpets were Ezra, the scribe, led the procession. At the fountain gate, they went straight up by the stairs of the city of David, on the ascent to the wall, passing the house of David all the way to the water gate on the east. The two choirs then took their places in the house of God. I also and half of the officials were with me, as well as the priests Eliakim, Maaseiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, Elionai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with their trumpets, and also Maaseiah, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Jeshua, Binnui, Shimei, and Joiarib. On that day they offered great sacrifices and rejoiced, because God had given them great joy. Even the women and children rejoiced, so that the celebration of Jerusalem was heard from a long way off. On that day men were appointed to be responsible for the storage rooms for the contributions, first fruits, and tithes. They were to gather from the fields around the cities the portions prescribed by the law for the priests and Levites. For Judah was pleased with the work of the priests and Levites. They performed the service of their God and the service of purification, along with the singers and gatekeepers, according to the command of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there had been directors for the singers and for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. So all Israel, in the days of Zerubbabel and Nehemiah, contributed the daily portions for the singers, the gatekeepers, and the Levites. The people of Israel made contributions for the priests, the Levites, and the storage rooms. Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 1 to 31. On that day they read from the book of Moses in the hearing of the people, and it was found written in it that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever enter the assembly of God, for they had not met the Israelites with food and water, but had hired Balaam against them to curse them, but our God turned the curse into a blessing. When the people heard this law, they excluded all those of foreign descent from Israel. Now before this, Eliashib the priest, who had been appointed as supervisor of the storeroom of the house of our God, had been friendly with Tobiah. He had provided Tobiah a large room in the courts of the house of God, where previously they had stored the grain offerings, the frankincense, the vessels, the tithes of grain, wine, and olive oil as directed for the Levites, the singers, and the gatekeepers, and the contributions for the priests. While I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes king of Babylon I had gone to the king, and after a while I requested leave from the king. I came to Jerusalem, and learned about the evil thing that Eliashib had done in providing Tobiah a room in the courts of the temple of God. I was very upset, and threw all the household furniture of Tobiah out of the room. Then I gave orders, and they cleansed the rooms, and brought back the vessels of the house of God, with the grain offering and the frankincense. I also learned that the portions for the Levites had not been given to them, so that the Levites and the singers who were responsible for the work had each gone back to their own fields. So I confronted the officials and said, "Why has the house of God been abandoned?" Then I gathered them and set them in their places. Then all Judah brought the tithes of grain, new wine, and olive oil to the storerooms. I appointed men to be in charge of the storerooms: Shelemiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and Pedaiah, one of the Levites, with Hanan son of Zaccur, son of Mattaniah, because they were considered faithful. They were made responsible for distributing the supplies to their relatives. Remember me, O my God, concerning this, and do not wipe out my loyal deeds that I have performed for the house of God and its service. In those days I saw people in Judah treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in grain and loading it on donkeys, along with wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads. They were bringing them into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. So I warned them about the day they were selling food. Men from Tyre who lived in the land were bringing in fish and all kinds of merchandise, and selling them in Jerusalem on the Sabbath to the people of Judah. I confronted the nobles of Judah and said to them, "What is this evil thing you are doing, profaning the Sabbath day? Was not your father's house like this? Did not your predecessors do the same things in our forefathers' days? So your predecessors gave us reason to expect this wrath from the Lord our God. But now you are bringing more wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath." When it became dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I ordered the doors to be shut and not opened until after the Sabbath. I also stationed some of my servants at the gates to make sure no load could be brought in on the Sabbath day. The merchants and sellers of all kinds of merchandise spent the night outside Jerusalem once or twice. Then I warned them and said to them, "Why do you spend the night around the wall? If you do this again, I will use force against you." From that time on they did not come on the Sabbath. I also commanded the Levites to purify themselves and come and guard the gates, to keep the Sabbath day holy. Remember this also in my favor, O my God, and have mercy on me according to your great mercy. In those days I also saw that the Jews had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and none of them could speak the language of Judah, but they could only speak the language of each people. I rebuked them, cursed them, struck some of them, and pulled out their hair. I made them swear by God, saying, "You must not give your daughters to their sons, nor take their daughters for your sons or for yourselves." Did not Solomon, king of Israel, commit such an offense? Yet among the many nations there was no king like him, and he was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, the foreign women caused even him to sin. Should we then listen to you and do all this great evil, by intermarrying with the people who do these detestable things? One of the sons of Jehoiada, the son of Eliashib the high priest, was the son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite. I drove him away from me. Remember them, O my God, because they have defiled the priesthood and the covenant of the priesthood and the Levites. So I purified them from everything foreign, and I established the duties of the priests and Levites, each in his work. I also made sure that the supply of wood at designated times and the firstfruits were brought to the house of God. Remember me, O my God, for good.